This is ELS 431, the novel in the modern world. On the course, we are going to study selected novels authored by writers who are seen to be sensitive to the moods, to the philosophy of the modern world. So it's important for us, first of all, to understand the concept of the modern world so that we can identify its literary moods in the texts that we want to study. Normally in literature, we look at the issues that are germane to the topic of our discussion, and then we So there are resources for the course because I taught it in the previous years. So you can visit my YouTube channel and search for the previous topics and listen to them. But when you get there, remember to subscribe. The subscription is free. And you can also follow me on my Facebook page, which is Ayoitim. I usually share some of my website content there to be helpful. And other resources. Remember that learning has moved away from what we are doing now. Normally, we're not supposed to even meet. I'm supposed to stay somewhere and lecture. Okay? So the time of moving or that other stress should not be there. So you must utilize that, the various avenues we have for learning. Okay? So that's how it works. So to the idea of the modern world, we are living in the modern world. We are living in the modern world. But the modern world goes as far back as the Renaissance. The modern world goes as far back as the Renaissance. That is, if you have to be elastic in your views of what should constitute the modern world, it goes as far back as the Renaissance. Because of the concept of modernity. Because of the concept of modernity or enlightenment, the modern world goes as far back as the Renaissance. In the spirit, seen in the spirit of secularism, in the spirit of humanism. In the spirit of man-centeredness, in the use of science and reason to better human condition, or to better human society. The concept of the modern world goes as far back as the Renaissance because of the inventiveness of the Europeans in the art of travel, in the art of voyaging, and the consequent discoveries of new places, even to the farthest ends of the earth. That's where the modern world began. So you want to talk about the modern world, you're talking about the philosophy of enlightenment, the philosophy of secularism, the philosophy of humanism that turned humanity's attention from the religious to the secular, from religious to the scientific. The celebration of man's ingenuity, the ability to invent machines with the knowledge of science. And the results, whether beneficial or destructive in human society or to man. So, for instance, the discovery of the compass, the sophistication in navigation led to the discovery of the New World, like Americas, the Caribbean, discovery of Africa, India, and the speed and the steadiness of the ships would allow man to reach distant places at the shortest time possible. Because with this invention, we are no longer so far apart anymore. These inventions bring man closer. It shortens distances and shortens time. With more inventions, the world becomes smaller and smaller. And today we call it a village. The world is a village. I bet a global village. So, the philosophy of the modern world is rooted in science and scientific philosophies. And this philosophy is not only traced to the 20th century, which is the era of modernity, but we can see modernity permeating human history from the Renaissance upward. You can trace modernity to the Renaissance. That's why I'm taking your mind to. Because this is where all these things began. You can connect the issues from there. All the issues that we talk about in this course, novel in the modern world, you can connect them to occurrences in the 16th century. And so, when you talk about the modern world and you want to be rigid, you can situate yourself in the 20th century. But if you want to be elastic, relative, then the modern world goes as far back as the Renaissance. And it is better for you to view it in that elasticity, because then you have a more comprehensive knowledge about what the modern world is all about. Now, so in a few sentences, I will let you know how that works. Okay? Because in the first place, the scientific method, the Enlightenment method in the 16th and the 17th centuries led to this discovery of America, Africa, India, and other parts of the world. And that brought about events like slavery and colonialism, the sale of human persons as goods, the domination of other races because you feel you're superior. And these are major themes in the novel of the modern world. And so if you don't go back as far, you don't go back to the Renaissance, you will not know the origins. You don't know how it all began. The greed in the modern man to take everything and still want more, and the consequences of that greed is what we study. It's one of the things we study in the novel of the modern world. So that is why in studying the modern world novel, we'll talk about slavery, we talk about colonialism, we talk about revolutions, we talk about the developments of counter philosophies and ideologies to cope with excessive ideologies like colonialism and racism, and so on and so forth. So you remember that in the late 15th century, Christopher Columbus went to America and claimed that he discovered the place. As if there were no other people there before him. And then he suppressed the indigenous people in those places for economic benefits. We are talking about the native Indians, the aborigines of America. Some of them were killed because they did not have immunity for the diseases that the Europeans brought. Okay? Most of the native Indians died because they lacked immunity for the terrible diseases that the Europeans brought to their land. They never knew anything like disease. And then others refused to be forced to work for the invaders. Others died because of overwork. They were not strong enough. And so, because the Europeans knew the economic importance of having plantations in the Americas, they decided to look elsewhere for labor. Since in the first place, the native Indians were insufficient in number and insufficient in strength. And a reverend father suggested that there were strong people in Africa, strong, able-bodied people in Africa who could work a whole day without eating. And that began the horrors of slavery. So the Europeans would take trinkets, toys, that they had in maybe Britain, Spain, Germany, and go to Africa. Exchange those toys with human beings. Could be mirror, could be something like mirror. In fact, I am told that mirror was the commodity that was most valuable in the slave trade. In fact, when you present mirror to the African king, there's no number of slaves you couldn't take. Okay? There were other articles of exchanges, but the mirror was most valuable. Like the person was like, so I can see myself in the mirror, and they will hang it there as a treasure. And they say you can take as many people as you want. You know? And you know that till today we still have this problem of valuing people by African leaders. They do not value our people. They can exchange them for anything that brings them satisfaction. Maybe money, properties in Dubai, expensive cars. They don't care. Because it happened. Happened in the 17th century. This is like Badagry. This is like Calabar. So when the horrors of slavery could not be borne anymore in the world because there was so much outrage against it, they decided to end it and change tactics. In fact, in some version, we are told that slavery ended not because those who practiced saw it as such a bad thing, but because they had a replacement. had an alternative. The alternative was the invention of machines, still driven by scientific methods and ideology. Invention of machines. And most of the machines were invented by slaves, because they had to find a way, an easier way, to do the work that they were asked to do, to execute the task that they were asked to execute. Most of the machines were invented by the slaves themselves. Though the owners took so because they had machines to replace the slaves, they had to succumb to the agitations in the world. They would not even have wanted to, because of the need to control others, to manipulate and oppress the other races that they thought were inferior. Remember, whatever action human beings take are motivated by ideologies. So racism was what motivated slavery. The idea that some people felt that they were better, superior to others. So, but even though slavery ended, they now had to devise other means of exploitation, of economic exploitation, because the interest has always been economic. And so they came up with the concept of the legitimate trade. So they devised the legitimate trade policy, which is what we call colonialism. From slavery to colonialism, which still gave them economic advantage over the other races, Africa in particular. This time around they said, oh, we have realized our mistakes. It was not good for us to trade in human beings. It was horrible. But we can have a better trade relations now. Okay? And what was the trade relations? You have primary resources, okay, like cocoa, timber, oil, as palm oil, okay. They will buy the products at cheap rates. Some they didn't even have to buy, some they stole. Some they forced the owners of the land to grow the crops. Free labor. Then they would take them, those raw resources, raw materials, back to Europe where they had their machines. They would transform the materials in. So we'll take the raw materials to Europe where they have, or where they had the machines. We are talking about the period of Industrial Revolution here, like the 17th, the 18th centuries. In the 19th century. They would transform the raw materials into finished products or goods. And they would take them back to Africa and sell at the higher rates. And then they repeated the process. And they would do this for centuries. And they became so rich. As I said, they did not have to do the trading all the time, there were things they took by force. Like the treasures, the artwork. And while they're doing this, they were telling the people that they were not civilized. They were telling the people that they were not civilized. They needed another God, needed another religion. And they were doing this so that they will play on the psychology of the people so that they cannot resist them. Which is why Karl Marx says that religion is the opiate of the masses. Those who are capitalists, who practice religion, practice it for a reason. They want to use it to have control over the poor. And to use it to have control over the masses. That is why the capitalist states need religion. Capitalist states need religion. Because it helps them to condition the minds of the people so that they can be controlled, they can be exploited, they can be oppressed. And they can be so oppressed that they do not see who the real oppressors are. They think that the real oppressor is Satan. Right? Each time you ask them, why are you suffering? To the devil hates me. The devil doesn't like me. It is the devil. It's the work of the devil. Alright? There's an uncle in my village that doesn't want me to be successful. Okay, my great-grandmother was a witch. But there's nothing like that. The real witches and the wizards are your leaders, and the colonial masters. They were first the colonial masters, then the enslavers or the slavers, and then the colonial masters, then your leaders in Africa. There is no devil anywhere except those in Aso Rock and in other power spaces. Those are the devils in central banks. And until you realize that, you will not know where your problem is, who your problem is, where to go to seek answers. Instead of going to the government house to ask questions, you now go to church every Sunday to pray to God. Doesn't make sense. Because they have conditioned you right from childhood to think that your problem is not another man by your side. Your problem is an invisible being. But it's your neighbor that's your problem. Okay? Your fellow brother in church is your problem. Your fellow sister in church, that's your problem. Okay? You guys sing and praise God together, but you are not on the same level. Because he knows how to inflate the price of cement. You guys are still brothers and sisters. There's no brothers and sisters there. So I want you to understand the replication. I want you to understand the replication of oppression that we study in the modern world until this moment in history. I believe it has always been economic exploitation of the less privileged people who will not understand the workings of the system. And so there were few Africans who traveled abroad and studied the Western system and realized that we were being oppressed. And they became radical. And they decided to fight against such a system. They were not only fighting against the white men, they were also fighting against their brothers who had been brainwashed by the white men and who were in love with the oppressors. Because there are situations whereby somebody oppresses you, but you still love the person. You're oppressed by someone, but you still love the person. In post-colonial terms, we call it ambivalence. Or ambivalence. The love-hate relationship that exists between the colonized and the colonizer. The love-hate relationship. Okay? You see, when the masses shout, cheer their leaders when they are passing by, and then after some time they will just say, but that man is also my problem. They have not paid salary. They have not paid bursary. No scholarship. Okay? But at the point he will throw you some crumbs and then you praise him again. It's ambivalence. And so when the colonial, you know all these issues, when the colonial masters were about to be sent off, they now devised another system of exploitation. They decided to leave, but to still remain behind. You will not see them again, but they'll still be there. Okay, it's like they get sophisticated, more sophisticated at each stage. They think better and better at every point. It's okay, we are going to leave. No problem, we are leaving. You are going to allow you to rule yourself. It is not right for us to impose our rule on you. We have realized our mistake, we are going. But, before they did that, they already planned the next system and seen that it will work. And what did they do? They decided to use your black brothers. Promise them some privileges, leadership positions, houses, cars, wealth, for their own personal use. But in a way, but make them to promise to hand over the entire land to them. So they work for them while they are in Europe. And we call them neo-colonial leaders. Whenever they need economic advice, they run to the West. So what should we do? And they will tell you, them do this way, do it this way. But they know that that advice will not benefit them. And if they refuse to do it, they will be killed. If they get into power spaces, they refuse to honor the agreement, they refuse to honor the policies, the neo-colonial policies. Before you know, you hear that there has been a coup, there has been an assassination, and they are gone. And it's easy to do that because they were the ones who trained your army. Your army goes to America for training. Your army goes to France for training. And so they have a connection. They know where to enter your country and how to enter. They come in. Some of them usually come into Nigeria, come in and leave. Nobody knows. You understand? But you cannot go to America, no matter how powerful you are as an army, you cannot enter American airspace and go back unharmed. But America can enter Nigerian space, do whatever they want to do, and then leave before we even realize that they were here. So they mean business. If the neo-colonial leader does not do what they want them to do, they will be gone. They will cook up a propaganda They will set up the leader, cook up a propaganda. It's even the people that will rise against that particular leader, and before you know it, it's taken off. Or they hear there's a coup. They'll simply promise another, maybe a junior officer in the army position, give him intelligence and the resources to overthrow that leader. As long as when he comes in, he does what they want him to do. And so when you hear about coups and counter coups in Africa, it has economic ends. And when you hear of conflicts and violence and division in Africa, it is for the economic interest of the West. They are the ones who will prosper, the ones who will profit from those dissensions in Africa. So that's why Africa is a troubled space till today. And when you don't understand the issues, then you will simply be dealing with the symptoms. You must understand that every large-scale conflict in Africa has foreign backing. Okay, so away from Africa, maybe we should talk about America for a while. So there was a time in British history when, the guys were so desperately poor. The economy was in ruin. And resources were scarce. And the population was high, competing for scarce resources. And so human values and human dignity were thrown to the winds. I mean, it is human nature. Okay? Like in the current economic situation in Nigeria, if you have anything of value, always sleep with it like this. Or you hide it where no one will see when you are leaving the house. Okay? Because the guys are not smiling. They can even take your pot of soup. You come back, you don't see your pot of soup again. It's that bad. It's human nature. And so crime rates were high, the prisons were filled to the brim, and there was no space to put people again in prison. Okay? For a minor offense like stealing a handkerchief, your hand could be cut off. So at a point they decided, okay, since we need labor in the new world, one of the punishments if you're caught doing something wrong, you're caught in a crime, will be for you to be sent on exile. So through this method, so many people were deported to Australia to build a new empire as punishment. As punishment. there were slaves on bond for a specific time, but a long time, maybe 30 years, maybe 40 or 50. So most of the white men who went to Australia to live in the modern world were criminals. And you can actually look at them as the descendants of what? Of criminals. Because the ancestors went there because of one crime or another. When they got to Australia, they saw that the place was already occupied by black people who were the aborigines of the land. Aborigines are the original owners of a particular place. They had a perfect system that aligned with nature and the earth in managing the land. Whereas the white man's system was destructive. So these black people resisted the invasion by the white people. The original owners of Australia are black people. That's what you need to understand. And one day, they decided that they have to eliminate all of them, to eliminate all the black people, so that they could take the land. So if you go to Australia today, you see it's the white people are the majority. But they are not the owners of the land. The owners of the land are black people, but they are now a minority. So we studied this historic crime in the novel, in the modern world. Man's inhumanity to another man. So if you read the novel, The Secret River, I think I could have a soft copy I could send to you. It's on the outline. You have the outline? Okay, you might not have the outline. But you have it soon. So we have The Secret River. You note that. That issue is raised. The issue of the destruction, the extermination of Aborigines to take over the land by white people is raised in The Secret River by Kate Grenville. And it is not the only instance. It is not the only instance. It is not the only instance. Because it happened in Argentina. It happened in America. I've already said that when Columbus got to America, he did not discover anything. The native Indians were there. In the Caribbean, the Caribs and the Arawas were there. But he told the whole world, I discovered America. I discovered America. He decimated them. Europeans decimated the Aborigines, the indigenous peoples, and took over the land. Now, when the blacks were taken to America as slaves, slavery of 300 years, they populated the land. Of course, you know how virile black people are able to reproduce. And so, at the end of slavery, not everybody could return to Africa. After all, how were you going to return? You didn't even know where you came from. 300 years, not yesterday. Right? 300 years, you don't even know who gave birth to you, who gave birth to you, who gave birth to you, and who gave birth to the person that gave birth to you. 300 years. Okay? So you didn't know whether to return to Nigeria or to Ghana or to Kenya. Okay? After all, the slaves mate without marriage. All right? The slave mated without marriage. It was just like animals mating. So the slave owner wants to have more slaves. You just put one slave woman and one slave man. Okay? And after that, the man could be sold to another person in another place. The child could be sold to another person in another place. Their names change. They don't know each other again. Okay? So you have a replication of a history of ruthlessness and identity crisis that continue to plague the average African American person till today. So that they keep asking themselves, who am I? Where did I come from? Whether it's in America or it's in the Caribbean, the same identity crisis, the same identity problem, the same sense of rootlessness and dispossession. This constitutes what we might call psychological trauma for the African American. They don't know who their father is. They don't know who their mother is. They cannot trace their roots correctly. Okay? So the theme of identity or identity crisis is predominant in the novel of the modern world. The identity problem is the problem of the modern man. And so when you see people saying, okay, so today I would like to identify as insect, or today I want to identify as a horse, it's still part of the identity crisis. Today I want to be a snake. Okay? I'm tired of being a man, so let me identify as a woman. I'm tired of being a woman, let me identify as a man. It's just identity. You can trace that to the same identity problem. I want to identify as transgender. I feel like I could be both man and woman today. So when you're studying the Harlem Renaissance, which is a topic in the course, you have to understand that there was a need for an ideology to counter racism. And there was a need for an ideology to cope with racism. to cope and to counter. So, Harlem Renaissance is a cultural force against white racism in American society. In the Caribbean, you had scholars who proposed theories to help us forget, to help the oppressed people to forget their origins in Africa. And were those who said it was necessary to return to Africa in order to solve the problem of identity crisis. We need to go back to our root to know where we came from. Like Bradworth. There were those who said, no, let us propose amnesia theory. Let us say that we lost our memory when we got to the Caribbean. That we experienced a shipwreck that erased our memory. And so we cannot remember where we came from. Let us take where we are as where we come from. Like Derek Walcott. When I said, no, we will not be complete, we don't know our roots back in Africa. And some of them had to go back to Africa, started looking for things to link them to a place like maybe Ghana or Nigeria, and so on and so forth. Some of the bracelets were returned to be permanently residents in Africa. All right? So you cannot discuss the novel in the modern world without the journey motif. The journey motif. Because the modern man is constantly mobile. Modern man is always on the move. The modern man is always on the move. The modern man is always mobile, cannot stay one place. The modern man is plagued by restlessness. Restlessness. Walk about. Walk about. So when you see someone that cannot sit in one place, person is a modern person. It is not in the habits of the modern man to reside in one place. Because he is plagued by the bug of restlessness. Plagued by the bug of restlessness. So, one of the major themes in the modern world novel is what? Exile. Exile. It results in exile. It cannot stay at home. No man, modern man cannot stay at home. It's always moving around. No man is always moving about. So when you are able to grapple with this issue, because when you look at America today, they still have these post-racial issues, post-emancipation issues, in the violence, in the gun violence. Once in a while you hear that the police have shot a black man, black person, okay? And because these black people are psychologically dispossessed, they cannot account for their lives. They are controlled by the environment. You know, the average black person would have gone to prison many times by the time the person turns 16. It will be difficult for you to be a black boy in America, black man in America, without going to prison. That experiencing prison once in a while. And they lack a sense of responsibility. The tendency to have a child here, another one there, another there, and never being at home. Because either he's out there drinking, or he has committed a crime and is already in prison. So we just ask you, where's your dad? Why don't we have your dad in the house? It's very likely that the dad is in prison. Or has been shot through gang violence. Dad is dead, or is in prison, or is useless doing drugs. So the mother has to raise the child alone, thus continuing the incidents of dysfunctional family pattern in American society for the black people. So it will take a conscious effort for the average black man to live a conventional life. Because the system is wired to make them irresponsible, careless, ruthless, criminal, and so on and so forth. So at the end of the day, it is the environment that determines the individual. And this is what we mean by environmental determinism. It's a system. You see that when you read a word like native son, Richard Wright, or black boy, Richard Wright, I think it should be one of the texts that we should study. Okay, so we'll just pause there for today. This is what you